Okay, let's talk about rifle setup and what goes into how I set up a rifle and what I think might be good advice for you. I get a lot of questions about which rail to put on a rifle, which optic to put on a rifle, which accessories I like, and why. And it's always very difficult to answer those questions because I'm usually missing the number one piece of information, which is context and use case. So that is the very first thing to determine before you start going in to set up a rifle or think about changing your current rifle is what is your use case for this rifle? Is it a gun that you're just going to plink with on the afternoons and shoot maybe 1,000 rounds a year? If that, is it going to be a hard use training rifle? Like let's say you're the type of guy who gets after it and you're shooting a ton, or is it serving that purpose as well as possibly being a rifle that you're going to depend your life on, right? Is this a rifle that you're using for defense? Is it a rifle that you're using for purposes of the Second Amendment? What is the use case of your rifle? That is going to determine everything else that comes after that. So I am, if you're, I'm just to cover it real quick, plinking rifles, hobby rifles, range toys, etc. Doesn't matter. Man, just go wild, do whatever you want, buy whatever you want, because at the end of the day, really, the stakes are low, right? So, like, if your rail holds zero, if your barrel gets shot out, after 5,000 rounds, like, whatever. So I'm not going to be focusing on that. I am going to be focusing on hard use rifles. So these are high round count training rifles or rifles that you are going to depend your life on or you are keeping for the purposes of the Second Amendment. So that's the context that I'm going to be talking about here today. So when it comes to how you set up a rifle, the knowing that use case is number one. Number two is two other criteria that I think are very important is going to be the engagement distance that you want to be able to engage to, and then the enablers that you have or maybe you are planning to have in the future. Those two considerations have a lot of impact. So let's talk about intended range. When we talk about intended range, we're going to talk about the barrel and the optics primarily. So you want to have a match between your barrel and your optic and your intended range. And I have 3 different setups here. We'll go through those different setups and how it works in my case. Setup number 1 is going to be the SPR or the designated marksman rifle, however you want to nomenclature it. This is a 16-inch barrel and a 3 to 18 optic. The intended range of this gun is 700 yards and in. 700 on a good day with decent wind calls. Again, we're shooting 5.56 here. So this gun is, in my opinion, is matched between the barrel and the optic and the intended distance that I want to reach. Also balancing with the fact that this would be a rifle that I would be carrying with me on a daily basis or very regularly in a situation in which I would be using it. So I'm balancing a couple things there. I'm balancing the velocity and the accuracy of the barrel. I'm balancing the power of the optic. And then I'm also balancing the weight and the setup of the rifle to make sure that it meets all of my other criteria. So I could have gone with an 18-inch barrel, but knowing that I was going to suppress this gun, I didn't want that additional 2 inches of length, pushing that suppressor even further out and pushing that weight even farther out, as well as adding weight to the barrel itself. When it came to the barrel profile, this is a Criterion Core barrel, which is a tapered barrel that starts out thick in the rear and then moves skinnier as it goes down towards the tip of the barrel. This helps balance the weight further back and reduces the overall weight. So again, making it a little bit easier to carry while still maintaining a lot of the rigidity of a thicker bull barrel. The optic choice of being a 3 to 18 scope for a designated marksman rifle, I like to have 2 times magnification for every 100 yards that I want to be able to engage. So for a 700 yard rifle, 14x would be the minimum that I would consider as suitable for that type of engagement distance. That being said, optics tend to perform at their best at about 80% of their total power. So a 3 to 18, when I cut that back to 80%, that leaves me around that 14, 15. I can't math well. But either way, I'm not maxing out my optic to hit the intended ranges that I want to hit. Same thing goes, we'll take a look at the other examples I have here. This is a 12.5 inch Sons of Liberty Gunworks upper and barrel. This is a this is a cold hammer forged barrel. So this is what I would consider kind of an ideal fighting rifle. Being a 12.5, it's going to have less velocity than a 14.5 or a 16-inch gun, but it is going to be a bit shorter. It's going to be a bit lighter, which is going to make it easier to carry around. With this build, I really emphasized durability and lightweight at the cost of some capabilities. So, for example, shorter barrel, shorter engagement distance. This gun is about a 400-yard gun, in my opinion. Going from the actual barrel itself being cold hammer forged, meaning it's going to last a very long time. The suppressor is a mix of stainless steel and titanium, so it's a little bit flashier than an Inconel suppressor, not as flashy as a full titanium can. There's just different parts of like the actual blast baffle is stainless, and then the other baffle is titanium. So it's not super sparky, but it's not as low signature as like a full Inconel suppressor like the White Bread. A lighter weight laser that lacks some features. The DIRV is a great laser. It's very powerful, but it does not have a lot of options. So it's lighter, but it is less capable as far as its ability to flood or spot. The Optic is an ACOG, 4x prism scope. So again, minimal magnification, especially for the intended range. Like that's a 1-to-1 magnification to every 100 yards. Again, this is not a designated marksman rifle though, so it's got some magnification. It's good enough. It's got a top dot, which is an aimpoint T2. So T2, an ACOG, a cold hammer forged barrel, all built for reliability while maintaining a decent amount of weight reduction. So it's a little bit easier to carry around and maneuver with for long periods of time. And then lastly, is a 10.4-inch 416 clone from Illinois Precision Machine. Has a red dot, has a laser, has a 10.4-inch barrel. So this gun's intended range is 200 to 300 yards and in. With a red dot, I have a magnifier that I can throw onto the back, which gives me 3 times magnification. So this gun is definitely intended for shorter ranges, but it has the barrel and the optic to match that intended range. The next thing that I really want to consider when setting up a rifle is going to be my enablers, which are going to encompass things like thermals, clip-ons, night vision, laser aiming modules, passive aiming with night vision, and gas mask usage. So these primarily affect the rails that I select for the rifles and then the optic height of the optics that I mount. So when it comes to rails, if you don't have enablers, if you don't have night vision, you don't have a thermal clip-on or a laser aiming module, the rail really is pretty irrelevant when it comes to rigidity. You want it to be free floated so it doesn't impact your barrel, but you don't really need anything that's retaining zero or super, super rigid. But when you do have enablers and you have lasers and you have thermal clip-ons, the rail's rigidity becomes extremely important. So for 2 of the guns, the SPR and the general purpose rifle, I have ripcord LDRA rails, which is their partial ARCA rails. Another enabler that I like to use frequently, which is currently holding the camera, is my tripod. So the ARCA portion allows me to clip into a tripod. And then the rails themselves are thermal fit. They have giant anti-rotation tabs that lock into the geometry of the upper to keep the rail from rotating and losing zero. So when I mount a laser aiming module like this MAL here, or the DIRV on the general purpose rifle, it allows those to once I zero them, they stay zeroed. And these guns have been absolutely beat over the last 2 years or year and a half or so that I've had the ripcord rails. Never had an issue with a shifting zero with any of my lasers, and these guns have been used extremely hard. So huge endorsement of those rails. It's why I'm willing to pay for those rails, and why I think it's really important when you're considering a rifle setup with enablers. All right, so next let's talk about optic height and how your enablers impact your optic height. Taller dots and taller optic risers have become kind of the rage over the last couple of years, and you'll hear a lot of different reasons from the people, mainly the people who sell those, as to what the benefits of those are. More natural head position, heads up shooting, etc. At the end of the day, when it comes to performance shooting, having less connection with the gun means that you have less control over the gun. So having your cheek not be touching the buttstock, or just being able to float your chin, if your gun's up and you're just floating your chin on your gun, that is less control than if your head is actually connected to the gun. So that is a trade-off, right? I choose to have a higher optics height for some of my setups, actually all of my setups, because I wear a gas mask commonly. I'm a big fan of the gas mask and the capabilities that enables me to have. So having a taller optic, while I'm trading off some controllability of the rifle, I am gaining capability when it comes to using other tools. Being able to passively aim through the optic with your night vision tubes is also a bit easier when the optic is taller up. I am not the biggest proponent of passive aiming. I think it has its place and is a skill that you should have. But it is an advantage of having a taller optic as well. For a setup like this one, it's a little bit unique in that it's a 10.5-inch barrel. It has a short handguard. For me to get a good placement for my hand on the rifle, I had to move the laser aiming module somewhere else. So again, going back to this mount, has a bit of a diving board on front to mount the laser. So this allows me to get a good firing grip and place the laser up and out of the way so that it doesn't splash all over my hands when I activate the laser. This also brings us to the point with lasers and stuff like that of tape switches. Not usually a huge fan of tape switches, but in a case like this where it's a trade-off, right? Tape switches add a failure point to your lighting and optic system, but sometimes it's necessary in order to achieve a proper grip. And so again, you have to make that decision if you're going to make that compromise or not. At the end of the day, the point of this whole video is just to say, make your rifle make sense. Make it make sense with your use case. Make it make sense with the intended range that you're planning on shooting. Make it make sense with the enablers that you have now or maybe that you plan to get in the future. If you do those things, I have a feeling you'll end up with a rifle that is much more suited to your needs and something you'll feel maybe less of the need to constantly change and tinker with. I mean, look, we all have restless rifle syndrome to some degree. I get it. I'm constantly shifting things around and trying new things. But, the main rifles that I have are typically pretty unchanged. This rifle, the only thing that's changed on it in the last year and a half is I got a new optic, a better version of the same optic I had, and then I put a better laser on it. Other than that, the actual design of the rifle hasn't really changed at all. So yeah, that's it. Appreciate you guys watching. If you watched this far, I appreciate you. And I'll be making some more video content like this. Really would love to answer some questions if people have questions. So yeah, throw them in the comments. Let me know what questions you have, and I'll happy to talk about them.